Spread over 17 different countries, there are currently more than 70,000 7-Eleven stores in the world. But did you know that 7-Eleven's creation was actually an accident? Or that it has been owned by a Japanese company ever since the 1990s? Keep watching to find out. Many companies come into existence because a savvy founder or entrepreneur wants to work out an unusual idea. Think Microsoft, Apple, or Amazon. With 7-Eleven, however, this was not the case. The entrepreneur who created the company didn't come up with the ideas. Instead, it was one of the many employees who saw a golden business opportunity and acted on it. Let's travel back in time, all the way to the 1920s. At this point, not many Americans had access to electricity. And as it was still the early days for the refrigerator, even those who had electricity at home often didn't have a fridge. Of course, people always hated throwing out expired food, so this doesn't mean that they didn't keep their goods fresh at all. No, back then, they had ice boxes. An ice box was essentially a large box with blocks of ice that kept the surrounding goods cold. This meant that most perishable foods were packed together with ice, and it also meant that there was a great demand for ice. The ice blocks didn't remain blocks forever, after all, and like all ice, sooner or later it would melt. Luckily, the blocks could be easily bought from ice shops, which were dotted all over the US. Selling ice was a big business, and in 1927, several successful ice house companies merged to form the Southland Ice Company in Dallas, Texas. At the company, a man named Jefferson Green was running the daily operations. He had close contact with the customers, and over time, he began thinking that it could be a good idea to expand the ice shop's services. What if, instead of only selling ice, they would start selling a few essentials too? Milk, eggs, and bread were always in demand, and when grocery stores were closed, there was usually no way to get them. Besides that, they could conveniently offer those customers who just needed a couple of things the chance to avoid crowded grocery stores. No more wasting time in line behind someone who's stocking up for the week when all you need is an egg or a carton of milk. After fleshing his idea out, Jefferson went to present it to his boss, Joe C. Thompson Jr. He was open to giving it a try, and once they began offering these additional items, the very first convenience store was born. While Joe Thompson had been open to the idea of expanding their services, the main focus was still on selling ice. The demand for it remained huge, and for several years, the Southland Ice Company continued to make a lot of profit. Then came the first name change, not to 7-Eleven, but to Totem Stores. While it may sound random, it actually also was. In an attempt to grab customers' attention, one of the managers had the idea of sticking a massive Native American totem pole in front of one of their businesses. And grab attention it did. The totem pole became somewhat of an attraction, and many locals came to the store to have a better look at it. Little by little, customers started calling the store the Totem Store, and the company quickly went along with it and officially adopted the name. They began sticking totem poles in front of all of their business, and they used it as a punning marketing gimmick, inviting customers to tote their purchases away. Adding new products to their shelves had also turned out to be a great idea. Customers loved having the chance to buy their essential goods whenever they needed them, and especially the weekends and holidays were busy days. But there was also another unexpected reason why expanding their range of products had been a good decision. With electric fridges becoming more common in every household, demand for ice had been dropping. This low demand greatly affected all the ice houses. But while most of them went bankrupt, the Southland Ice Company began thriving. After all, they had much more to offer than only ice. Changing the store's name to Totem had turned out to be a great idea. So why and when did they change it to 7-Eleven? Well, the stores were open from 7 in the morning to 11 at night, 7 days a week. At the time, these operating hours were considered to be incredibly long, and truly set the stores apart from any other of its kind. And wanting to call attention to their extended hours, the company decided to adopt a brand new name, 7-Eleven. Fast forward to the late 1950s, and business was booming. The concept was a hit, and the 7-Eleven stores were increasingly getting more popular. The only problem? It was all still happening in Texas only, and the stores weren't really known beyond that state. Now the time had come for that to change. During the next couple of years, a massive expansion project was rolled out. To increase their monopoly, they bought up numerous rivaling convenience stores, and to continue attracting a steady stream of customers, the company put a lot of emphasis on the fact that shopping in their stores was incredibly convenient. There were no long waiting lines, and they were open at times when most other stores were already closed. Add to that the fact that the store's opening hours were literally advertised in its name, and you had a recipe for a hit. Of course, today, the name 7-Eleven makes less sense as the shops are generally open 24/7. So, when did this change? The story goes that in 1963, a University of Texas football game had just ended a tournament late one night. Afterwards, everyone went to a 7-Eleven store for some celebratory drinks, and they decided to stay open the entire night. Managers saw the economic benefits of staying open all night, and soon other locations followed suit. Around the time when the company began expanding beyond Texas and staying open 24/7, another accidental milestone was reached: the invention of one of 7-Eleven's most beloved drinks, the Slurpee soft drink. The Slurpee is arguably the world's most popular non-alcoholic frozen drink, but calling it an invention of 7-Eleven is perhaps a bit of a stretch. You see, the true beginnings of the slushy drink can be traced back to a man named Omar Knedlik. Like so many great inventions, the Slurpee was created by accident. In the late 1950s, Omar owned a chain of ice cream shops in the Dallas area. And when one day his soda fountain went out, he had to improvise. He had some bottles of soda in the freezer to stay cool, but when he got them back out again, they were a little frozen and slushy. Funnily, customers loved the drinks even more that way, and they began requesting them. A light bulb went off, and realizing that he had a surprise hit on his hands, Omar began building a slushy soda machine by using the air conditioning unit from his car. The drink was added as a new product on the menu, and he built a couple more machines for convenience stores. Things really took off in the 1960s though, when Omar's business became part of 7-Eleven. 7-Eleven licensed the machine, and to make the drink unique for their stores, they also gave it a new name: Slurpee. Thanks to inventive advertising, Slurpees were an instant hit. The cups had intensely colorful designs, and the wacky flavor names were edgy for the time. 7-Eleven also began creating some funky commercial songs, and the ads were so popular that radio DJs were even getting requests to play Slurpee commercials. 7-Eleven has stated that they sell some 14 million Slurpees a month, and since the Slurpee's birth in 1966, over 7.2 billion cups have been sold. That's nearly one for every person on the planet. Of course, the Slurpee is just one of 7-Eleven's many, many, many products, and in some countries, like Japan, they don't even have them at all. But more on that in a bit. By the early 70s, things were going so well that the company felt that it was time to branch out further. Expanding beyond Texas had proven to be a good idea, so now they wanted to try it on an even bigger scale. What if 7-Elevens could be found all over the world? They licensed a Japanese affiliate in 1973, and by 1974, there were already 5,000 outlets worldwide. The brand story in Japan is quite unusual. Today, there are over 20,000 7-Eleven stores in Japan, which is twice as many as in the US. In fact, their largest presence is in Japan, and in 1990, Southland even sold its 7-Eleven store chain to a Japanese company after a bankruptcy. But how did this come to be? In the early 1970s, a large Japanese retailer called Ito Yakodo joined forces with the Southland Corporation to launch the first 7-Eleven store in Japan. Since then, 7-Eleven stores began popping up one after another throughout the country. In 1980, there were about 10,000 of them, and by 1992, there were already more than 20,000 stores. But this still doesn't explain why an American brand is owned by a Japanese company. During the heyday of corporate raiders in the 1980s, the Canadian financier Samuel Bellsberg threatened Southland with a hostile takeover. In response, the Thompson family, which was still in control of the company, decided to buy Samuel out. For this, they needed a lot of money, and many of the 7-Eleven's assets were sold off to cover the debt. The good news is that they succeeded in beating Samuel, but the bad news is that the massive debt turned out to be too much to handle. Southland filed for bankruptcy in 1990, and it was at this breaking point that Ito Yakodo stepped in. They bought a controlling stake in 7-Eleven by buying up 70% of the shares in Southland Company. And judging by their store's massive success, that seems to have been a good decision. Today, 7-Eleven is more global than American. The stores can be found in 17 different countries around the world, and their presence is especially big in Asian countries. You see, 7-Eleven convenience stores may have begun in the United States, but they eventually developed in new ways in Japan, and it is this Japanese model that has spread to other countries. Two major reasons for this are their innovative products and unique distribution system. From the beginning, Japanese 7-Eleven stores developed their own recipes for two traditional foods, onigiri and oden. And soon enough, they also began delivering refrigerated meals and other food products to stores several times a day. This means that what you find in the store is generally fresh and of high quality. Customers loved it, and the attention to detail has paid off. And in countries like China, Thailand, Taiwan, 7-Eleven is even perceived to be somewhat of a luxury brand. The stores are mostly located in upscale neighborhoods, and the people you see in the stores are generally more affluent. While this hasn't been the case in the US, it seems like they're now hoping to achieve something similar too. In 2019, the then 90-year-old brand launched its first Evolution store, aimed at a new generation of consumers. The stores are supposed to be an experiential testing ground where customers can try and buy 7-Eleven's latest innovations. The store's success remains to be awaited, but with consumer behavior changing due to COVID-19, the convenience store industry could be on the verge of a profound change. Will 7-Eleven be able to maintain its long-held foothold in the market? This was the story of 7-Eleven. The convenience store franchise has helped revolutionize how and when we shop for our essentials. And over the years, many accidental discoveries paved the way for its success. Had they continued only selling ice, they would probably have gone bankrupt, just like all the other ice house companies. But instead, they expanded, not only far beyond ice, but also far beyond Texas. And what once started as an ice house in Dallas back in 1927 has evolved into the world's largest retailer. Did you know of 7-Eleven's story? And have you ever been in a 7-Eleven store before? Share it in the comments. And if there's anything that you think we missed in this video, make sure to share that too. I hope you learned something today. And don't forget to check out our channel for more inspiring business videos.